No. It's going to be like, you'll be on there. No, what's the... You'll be on her, yeah, or you'll be on her actual We Got Used to It.
Well, I'm a celebrity.
Yeah.
Good morning. The time is now 9:30 and I shall resume this inquiry into the appeal made by Mr A. Rowan, Barrett David Wilson Homes Mercia under Section 78 of the Town and Country Planning Act 1990 against the decision of Redditch Borough Council to refuse planning permission for what is described as a residential development class C3 with a vehicular access point onto Hither Green Lane, play areas, public open space including footways and cycleways, sustainable urban drainage systems and all around ancillary and enabling infrastructure. And that's at the address of land west of Hither Green Lane, Redditch. This is the third day of the inquiry. First, please, can the mobile phones be turned off or put on silent? In relation to fire escape procedures, there's no fire alarm tests planned. So if you hear any alarm, please exit out of the nearest designated fire exits that are marked. In the main hall, this is the doors out to the courtyard, then follow this round to the right or back out to the main entrance you came in through. For the small hall, this is again through the fire exit doors of the courtyard or the door you entered through. The assembly point is the corner of the car park opposite the building, and there will be a member of staff there to direct you. Yesterday I heard from the appellant's golf, design, transport and planning witnesses, and I also made arrangements for the site visit. Today, I will carry out the planning obligations and then the planning conditions roundtable session. I'll hear closing statements from the main parties, any cost claims, and then I will close the inquiry. The site visit will also take place later today after the inquiry closes. Firstly, are there any housekeeping matters, Council?
No, sir.
Appellant?
So, just a couple of points. Could we possibly do conditions first rather than obligations? The solicitor dealing with the obligations wasn't able to be here until about 10 minutes from there. Oh, here he is. He's just walked in.
Okay.
Would that be acceptable to you if we do that first?
Does that cause any issue for the council? Or?
I have no objection.
That's very kind, sir.
Okay, we'll do conditions first.
And then one more point, which was that Mrs. Ventham's was going to come back to you on that flood map that Mr. Robinson produced.
All right. Okay. Yeah.
Would it be convenient for her to just deal with that now?
Yes. I mean, I think the issue was firstly whether it should be accepted or not, and I understand that it was going to be passed across to the appellants to.
I think the answer to it is so simple that it probably doesn't. We don't need to get into a debate about whether it should be accepted. Okay. I think this is where we got to.
Yeah, so what we were handed was effectively the first page of the EA Surface Water Floodplain website. What you then need to do is click through 2 further pages to then see the actual floodplain map. It doesn't raise anything that hasn't already been considered because it's not a new map, but we can add a sentence or 2 into that report that we're going to produce for next week. But it's fine to come in because it's just a front page of the EA website.
Okay. Does Council have any view in terms of the acceptance of that document?
No. No comments.
Okay. Mr. Robinson, I'll accept that document. Have you got a copy for me now? Right, thank you.
Could Mr. Robinson please? Thank you.
So that will be inquiry document 10. Okay then, so let's move on to the planning conditions session.
Just to note, as I said at the beginning of the inquiry, Scarlett Lambeth will lead for the appellant on the conditions. Mrs. Ventham may chip in, but you're in Mrs. Lambeth's capable hands.
And Mr. Robinson, do you intend to have an input in terms of this session? I know you sat obviously at the table, so can I take... Oh, okay. Okay.
No, I don't.
Oh, great, okay. Okay, the planning conditions roundtable session. A discussion on conditions is standard practice. It doesn't indicate that I've made up my mind on the appeal. I'll base our discussion on the planning conditions document, which is inquiry document 1, and I will need to assess against the tests which are set out in the framework. I do have some questions on some of the conditions, but I will need to run through all of the conditions. I think firstly it'd be useful for me to know whether actually the conditions are agreed between the council and the appellant. Mr. Lester?
It is my understanding that they are agreed.
Mrs. Bentham? Sorry, Miss Lambert.
Thanks. They are agreed. There's just a couple of minor comments on some of the wording.
Okay. So will they be pointed out to me as we go through? Okay. Okay, so starting first, the first condition is the statutory timescale for implementation. And then conditions 2, which is the plan's condition for the purposes of certainty. Now, obviously, if I was minded to allow the appeal, this is a list of plans that would appear exactly as is on this list. I do notice, well, I heard when, I think it was during my opening remarks on Tuesday, that there was a plan reference that's been changed since the previous version of the conditions document. So I think it'd be useful to indicate to me which plan number that is.
Okay, I will just double check. Just if we carry on through them, and then I'll just come back to you on that point, because I just need to find the track change version. Oh, there we go, Miss Lambert. No, so you do.
It was house type distribution plan 27DJ.
House type distribution plan 27
DJ.
EJ. Okay. And can you tell me roughly in terms of where that is on this schedule of the conditions?
Yeah, it's the second plan listed in the table.
So I'm clear. So the previous version was ME 2427DD. Now it's ME 2427DJ.
Correct.
Thank you. And then condition 3, which relates to land contamination for reasons related to protecting public health. With this condition, I notice that it has the phrasing, unless otherwise agreed by the local planning authority. I also notice as well some of the other conditions have wordings to the effect like acceptable to the highway authority or to that effect. So where I just wondered why those sort of phrases are in the conditions. They do seem to be imprecise. Mr. Lester, is there a reason for that?
In terms of condition 3, this is a standard wording of a contamination condition from my colleagues at WRS contamination, county contamination. In terms of that element, if the inspector wants to suggest a more acceptable wording, the council will be acceptable to that. But this is a standard condition, and I'm oh, sorry. Is that a little bit better? Okay, apologies. I'll just reiterate what I indicated to the inspector. Condition 3 is a standard condition that's set out by WRS contamination, who look at matters relating to contaminated land. And insofar for the purposes of the sort of planning conditions, it's been included unchanged, but a more acceptable wording could be agreed if
Okay. I think my question really is why is it included at all, that phrase?
Well, I think in the experience of WRS, they're seeking, they obviously understand the complexity of contaminated, of sites which have contaminated issues, and are allowing a little bit of flexibility in certain circumstances.
Does the appellants have any view on that?
We would be happy for the condition to start at development, so remove reference to unless otherwise agreed by the local planning authority.
Okay, thank you. So I'm now going to move on to condition 4, which is the construction ecological management plan, and that's for reasons related to biodiversity. And then condition 5, which is the habitat enhancement management plan related to biodiversity net gain. With this condition, I wondered when it would need to be implemented, whether that's explicit in the condition or not. Mr. Lester?
In terms of condition 5, I think there'd be as part of the habitat enhancement management plan, there will obviously be details regarding implementation, of which would be submitted and considered by the local planning authority. Clearly, and if those elements weren't within that condition, then clearly the condition wouldn't be in a position to be discharged and would require further information.
Okay. Does it therefore require something to akin requiring details and implementation schedule within the condition?
I think that's a reasonable suggestion.
Does the appellants have any view on that?
We agree that, but can I just point out for condition 4 and 5 and a couple of others, it makes reference to including demolition. I'm not sure if this needs to be removed.
Okay, and why is that?
Because there's nothing on site that needs to be demolished to start the works.
I mean, when I, just on that point, when I, as I think I said in my opening, I made a visit to the surroundings. There did seem to be some sort of building in the corner of the sites on nearest Dagenham Lane Road. I mean, obviously, I was just looking through trees, so it maybe not be a building. I don't know, but there appears to be some sort of structure there.
Yeah, there is a relative. That's fine. That's fine. I mean, we can leave it in there. I think it was just because it's such a small structure.
Okay.
Arguably, does it trigger demolition? But it's fine.
So condition 6, which is the drainage strategy. It's actually the reason for that relates to ecology, but I wondered whether also the reason would be minimising flood risk and providing satisfactory drainage. Was that also a reason for the condition or not, Mr. Lester? Or is it a drainage condition purely relating to ecology?
The wording of that condition is from colleagues from North Worcestershire Water Management. The reason for the condition is outlined by them. Well, the justification and reason for that condition is based on information that they've provided.
Okay. But does the council have a view in terms of whether that should also, the reason for such a condition in terms of drainage strategy should also concern minimising flood risk and providing satisfactory drainage on a site?
I think, again, that's a reasonable inclusion.
Does the appellants have a view on that?
We agree with it.
Then we have condition 7, which is the construction environment management plan, which is for highway safety related reasons. Then condition 8, which is the access visibility display for reasons related to highway safety. In terms of the trigger for this condition, I noticed that it's no development shall take place, say, as opposed to occupation. So I just wondered if there's a particular kind of highways reason for that. Are you aware of that, Mr. Lester?
In terms of the reason for that,
For that trigger, yeah.
for that trigger, purely on highway safety grounds.
So the access would, so there's what displays would need to be in place prior to construction taking place. Is that?
That's the intention of the condition.
Does the appellant have any view on that?
Our preference would be occupation.
And why would that be?
There's an existing access point already into the site serving the... no, sorry. We're talking about... Maybe it's just me misreading the condition, which may be then that we need to... No, it's fine. Exactly. No development. Well, yeah, that's... Well, I think you'd have to say no development... Let's say no development... No development... Obviously, technically putting the access in is development in its own right. I mean, we're happy for it to be no development. It's just that the preference would be for preoccupation because there is an existing access point already into the site.
Okay.
But
Thank you. And then condition 9, which concerns arboricultural measures, and that's for reasons related to the amenity value of trees. Condition 10, which is the archaeological work programme for reasons related to protecting the historic environment. I did wonder whether this condition provides for the trial trenching, which I understand the applicant accepts. Does the appellant have a view on that?
yeah, I think from our perspective, one of the things that we just wanted to flag was obviously, for example, it says vegetation clearance, but we exactly that. So we may need to do trial trenching, and a precursor to needing to do trial trenching is potentially geophys. And in order to do geophysical, we would need to do some site clearance as well. So we would just want to ensure there's the flexibility for us to be able to do trial trenching and to be able to clear the site in order to do any sort of pre-geophys works as well.
So does the condition need to refer to trial trenching and geophys then?
Yes, I think it does, just to allow for that option.
Is Lester any view on that?
I think that would be acceptable in these, in relation to the work that would be required to for that condition.
Then condition 11, which is the external materials related to reasons of character and appearance. Then condition 12, which is soft landscaping for reasons again related to character and appearance and also biodiversity. Notice there's a kind of paragraph under the main list of criteria which refers to the areas of public open space and incidental open space. I mean, do details of those need to be provided in relation to soft landscaping, or alternatively linked to a already submitted plan? Mr. Lester?
Well, obviously that element I think would be included within the landscaping scheme. However, I don't think there'd be any objection to it. The areas of public open space, incidental open space, etc., having its own
Okay.
specific reference.
Okay. See, appellants have a view on that?
No, we agree that. We just request that where it says prior to construction of any development, that says dwelling instead of development.
Sorry, that says...
Dwelling instead of development.
Okay.
I think it just provides a bit of clarity that we're definitely talking about the houses, because otherwise it's a pre-commencement. Potentially it could be read as a pre-commencement to anything above ground, and I'm not sure that's the intention of the condition.
So you want it related to occupation? Is that what
No,
you...
no, it was prior to the construction of any dwelling hereby permitted, rather than just generic development.
Mr. Lester?
Yeah, I would say that would be an acceptable amendment. It's certainly not the intention of the condition to be a pre-commencement.
Okay.
I think then, so just not to jump too far ahead, but I think that probably then applies to condition 13 as well, which is worded in the same way.
Okay. Is there any further comments on condition 13?
Yes, just on 13B, we wanted to remove reference to samples may be required because this isn't precise. And then similarly for 13C, we'd want to remove reference to where appropriate for the same reasons that this isn't precise.
So in terms of the first change, so basically you wouldn't provide, the samples wouldn't be provided. Is that the kind of upshot of that change?
I think it's either we do or we don't.
Yeah.
I think what we struggle with is how do we know, or how does anybody who implements this know whether they've got to provide samples? So either we provide them or we don't provide them.
Okay.
And the same with the following point where it says where appropriate. It's just not clear whether something would be acceptable or not.
Does Lester have any views on that?
Yeah, well, I consider sufficient details could be submitted in the form of plans, and that samples would not be required, and that element can be moved. And yes, I agree in terms of the where appropriate. Well, it isn't precise, and also can be removed.
And condition 14, which is the levels condition for reasons related to protecting living conditions and character and appearance. Condition 15.
Sorry, can I just interject on there, 14? We would want to amend this to prior to the commencement of any dwelling hereby permitted.
I think it's the sort of the potential for confusion when prior to preparation of levels on site. I don't think that's massively clear what that means.
I mean, potentially, could there be levels changes before the dwellings are started?
Well, they potentially, yes.
There was some discussion yesterday, wasn't there, of spoil leaving the site and going to the golf course.
But then I suppose, but then we could tie it back to a sort of datum point or something like that. It's just, I mean, I don't have the actual principle of kind of when we provide it is not an issue. I just don't think, I'm not sure what prior to preparation of levels on site 100% means. I'm not sure at what point somebody would judge that we were preparing levels on site.
Oh,
So would you be happy to? I think exactly that. So we're happy. You know, we don't have an objection to when we do it. I think it's just the wording doesn't tell me when we need to do it or when we need to submit those details. If the answer is it's prior to commencement of, the answer is prior to commencement of the residential, of dwellings, then that's absolutely fine. We just need the clarity on exactly at what point the council will want that information submitted.
does the council have any view on that? Mr. Lester?
well, the council wouldn't have it, and no, I don't. I mean, prior to I think prior to the commencement of building the dwellings would be more precise in this instance, and would ensure it's clear from appellants and the local planning authority's point of view when that information was to be submitted.
Okay. Well, I'll consider all those views in terms of what's been said on that condition. And then condition 15, which concerns the play equipment related to recreational purposes. I wondered when the play equipment would need to be. Well, I actually did wonder whether or not, because play equipment's also referred to in condition 13, isn't it?
That was our view as well.
So is the condition necessary?
Don't think so.
Mr. Lester?
On the basis of the change to, or the proposed change to condition 13, then condition 15 could be removed.
And then condition 16, which is the landscape and ecological management plan. How is this different from what's from condition 8, which is the habitat enhancement management plan? Mr. Lester, is there what details would be different from that condition? That's condition 5.
Yeah, in terms of this particular condition, I can accept there would be some repetition between those elements. I have no I have no preference in terms of which condition is ultimately used.
I mean, I know you said that there was some repetition. Is there something in this condition which wouldn't be in condition 5 in terms of what's envisaged would be submitted?
I don't believe so.
Okay. What's the appellant's view on that in terms of how these two conditions work together?
Yeah, no, that's fine. One of the thoughts that we had was that this one could probably be deleted now. I think it was just, it's sort of similar maybe with sort of 14 or a couple of the earlier conditions with soft and hard landscaping. We just wondered as well whether there's an opportunity to combine conditions rather than have just to reduce the number.
And then condition 17, which relates to lighting. That's also, I understand, for reasons relating to biodiversity. I just wonder what sort of lighting is this seeking to control? Obviously, there's different types of lighting. There's the road lighting, security lights in houses, things like that. So, what sort of lighting is it seeking to control?
It would be primarily the road, street lighting. I don't think it would be. It wouldn't require details of. Sorry. Hello. Can you hear me better now? In terms of lighting, it would be primarily it would be the street lighting and associated lighting around open space areas.
I think it's also down anything that's closer to the River Arrow as well, which is picked up in the ecological reports.
So would that include lighting on houses as well, or not?
No, I don't know, because the houses are sufficiently far away. I think it was to do with if we, any lighting of open space down in that area.
Okay, thank you. And then condition 18, which is a kind of almost a kind of maintenance-related condition. Mr. Lesser, I just wondered why details of the management company and their maintenance agent would be required, because I presume over time that could change. So I wonder why that features in the condition.
Well, I would say in terms of condition 18, it is primarily a reason to for the local planning authority to ensure that the open space areas will be adequately maintained for the occupiers of the proposed development and any users of the new open space areas.
Okay. Obviously, there's also condition 12, which covers the soft landscaping detail and the public open space and incidental open space areas. I wondered whether could that condition cover the maintenance issue.
If specific reference was made to the management, then yes, that particular condition could incorporate those elements.
And similarly, where condition 18 relates to drainage, again, we've obviously already discussed a drainage condition earlier, which is condition 6. Could that also cover drainage for the open space as well?
That would be correct.
See, Helen, do you have any view on that?
No, I think I was back to this point about if we can combine conditions, then all the better. We've got no problems, obviously, submitting details of the maintenance regimes, etc. That would be standard practice. I'm not sure whether the proposed management company and their maintenance agent is necessarily relevant, as you say, so it could change over time. But we don't have an issue with it. I'm not sure it's necessary.
Okay, then move condition 19, which is the Dagenham End Road A441 Birmingham Road works related to highway safety. Obviously, we've already discussed that in some detail. That includes the plan reference there.
Can I just add on that, please? Could we add the planning application reference number that goes with the plan to avoid any confusion?
Yeah, do you want to give me that reference?
Yep. Yeah. It's 19
Yep.
00976 HYB.
HYB.
Yeah, HYB.
So 19 00976 HYB.
Correct.
I would say in relation to that particular application reference, obviously that scheme is a cross-boundary scheme, so it's probably beneficial to include the other. It's a Bromsgrove and Redditch planning application, so I think it's probably beneficial to include the other planning reference.
Okay.
In that, if we're seeking to include the relevant reference numbers.
Okay. So the one I've been given is that Redditch or Bromsgrove?
That's Redditch's.
Okay.
I can give the inspector the Bromsgrove number if he's.
So would some of those works fall in Bromsgrove then? Is that what you're?
Just to clarify, so this might help. The reason that we put the planning application reference number in there is because that drawing relates to that planning application. So almost if somebody looks at this decision on face value, they might think that if I read this condition blind, I would think that drawing number was to do with our planning application, and obviously it's not. It's another planning application. So simply the point that Ms Lambeth made was just that we're putting the reference in there so that somebody knows that that's a plan related to another application, and they know where to find it effectively, so that you can read the decision notice as it's meant to be read.
Okay. And again, this has the phrasing as well, or similar scheme acceptable to the Highway Authority. Again, I wondered why that phrase had been put in. Obviously not least because it would be the local planning authority would be enforcing the condition rather than the Highway Authority. Is there a particular reason for that, Mr Lester? And indeed, if the condition was ever amended for another plan, it would be the local planning authority would be dealing with the amendment rather than the Highway Authority. Though obviously, I appreciate you may well consult them on it, but it would be the local planning authority that would be dealing with it.
Yes. I mean that particular reference to the Highway Authority could be removed.
And so any further views on that condition?
No, I mean, as I think one of my colleagues has just said, obviously it may be that as that scheme goes through technical approval, that it may be a tweak to it, but obviously we'll deal with that at that point in time. That's the approved scheme, and therefore that's the one that should be referenced.
Okay, then condition 20, which relates to the River Arrow pedestrian cycle route for reasons related to encouraging non-motorised forms of transport.
Can I add, please, that the condition makes reference to a footpath of 3.5 metres, but it should be 3 metres, as Mr Fairgrieve set out in his evidence yesterday.
Mr Lester, do you have any view on that?
There's probably 3 metres is what's shown on the plan as well.
I mean, would an alternative be to reference the condition to a plan?
Yeah.
I think that's is that 013 revision A? Is that the most
Let me see.
most update version of that plan?
Let me just.
Yes, I believe that's core document I9 that it can be found at.
But yeah, that would be the.
That's correct.
exactly
Yeah,
that.
it is called
Easiest thing,
document
isn't it?
I9.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I said, if we just tie it to that plan, then that removes the ambiguity.
The local planning authority wouldn't have any objection to that change.
And then condition 21, this is obviously similar reasons for the last condition, again relating to highway, cycleway, walking improvements. I I know this notice the reference there is just PSO 14, but my understanding was when the transport evidence was given that that's now revision B. Is that correct? Because that plan was attached to Mr. Fairgrieve's evidence in the appendix, I believe.
We'll just double check that, sir. But if that's the one that's in Mr. Fairgrieve's appendix, then that's the correct plan. Apologies, I hadn't spotted that.
Mr. Lester, any view on that?
If that plan is the one referenced within the proof of evidence, then yeah, that would be the correct plan reference.
Any further comments on that?
No, sorry,
that's
I've moved ahead, sorry.
No. I noticed obviously there we've got the pedestrian cycle improvements for, I think for along the River Arrow and also I think Birmingham Road, but we don't appear to have the equivalent for the ones along Dagenham End Road.
No, it's true.
Which I think is O12 revision A. I think I8. I think is the core document. Should also be a similar word.
Yeah, there needs to be a similar one to secure the delivery of those as well. Yeah, that's fine.
Mr. Lester.
I would agree with that a further condition would be required.
And then condition 22, which is access, parking and turning, highway safety related reasons.
I think...
Is that, sorry?
Sorry, no, sorry, I cut you off, sorry.
I was going to say, does that need thereafter retained or something similar?
It can, yeah, we can add that on as well. I think also there just needs a little bit of precision that needs to be added, because obviously the development we occupied, everybody won't move in at the same time. Obviously the front property, the early properties will be occupied as maybe the remainder of the site is still being built. So normally we would look for that condition to be something along the line of no dwelling hereby approved shall be occupied until the access, parking and turning facilities serving that dwelling, so that it's clear that that not every parking space has to be built before any house can be occupied, because it will be occupied as the site gets built.
Mr. Lester?
That would be an acceptable suggestion.
And then condition 23, cycle parking for reasons related to encouraging non-motorised forms of transport.
No.
Condition 24, noise mitigation measures to limit noise and disturbance. Again, does that need a thereafter retained in terms, because obviously it's concerning mitigation measures. Mr. Lester?
That would be satisfactory.
Sorry, so I was just double checking. With regard to 24, we just might need the because I think the noise scheme as originally submitted, the layout which underpins that is one of the previous revisions.
Okay.
So it just might be that actually what we've just got to do is update the assessment to fit with the 214 unit scheme. I mean, arguably the overall kind of where the properties sit in relation to the noise source hasn't changed. I'm just conscious that plot numbers and things like that might have changed.
Okay, so rather than this condition, then does there need to be another noise assessment?
Yeah, I think it's
considered under a condition.
Exactly that. Yeah, I think it just needs to be an updated assessment, and then we know exactly what the mitigation measures are for each plot.
So Lester, do you have any views on that?
That would be acceptable.
Okay, then condition 25, which is a residential travel plan, again for reasons related to encouraging non-motorised forms of transport.
That's fine with us.
Any other comments on conditions, Mr. Lester?
I have no more comments.
And the appellant's team?
No further comments.
Okay. Obviously, I know I've had some discussion about pre-commencement and the like, but there are still some conditions that will be pre-commencement. So, on the basis they're set out in the schedule, can I assume they are agreed by the appellant?
Yeah, absolutely fine.
Okay, thank you. Any final comments and conditions, Mr. Lester?
No final comments.
Appellant's team?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That concludes the planning conditions roundtable session. We'll now move on to the planning obligations roundtable session. So we'll have just a 2-minute adjournment.
Thank you very much.
Is that on?
Okay, so we're now on to the planning obligations roundtable session. I'll need to assess the obligations that are performing the tests that's set out in paragraph 58 of the National Planning Policy Framework and also regulation 122 of the Community Infrastructure Lever Regulations. Those tests are necessary to make the development acceptable in planning terms, directly related to the development, and fairly and reasonably related in scale and kind to the development. And that is what the roundtable session will centre on. So I'm going to refer to the draft Section 106 agreement, which contains the obligations, and that's Inquiry Document 3, and also the compliance statement from the Council, which is Inquiry Document 2. And as I say, the draft 106 agreement which I have is the one that was submitted in accordance with the timetable that was set out in the case management conference note. So who would leave the council? Ms Lester, you're going to leave? Just checking you're not bringing in a solicitor.
No, I'm not bringing a solicitor.
And to the appellant.
Hello, that will be me. My name is Matthew Scudamore. I'm from Gately Legal, and I've negotiated the Section 106 agreement with the council solicitor, the county council solicitor, and the landowners.
Okay, and you're a solicitor yourself?
Yes.
Okay. Obviously, as always with planning obligation roundtable sessions, this isn't the final version of the document, so if there are any changes that are intended to it by the main parties, can you please point them out to me as we go through the schedules? So starting first with the first part of the 106 agreement, which is the general questions and whether there are definitions and so forth, I guess. So is there anything that parties wish to draw my attention to in that definition section? Mr Lester?
There's nothing that the council seek to raise.
Okay. And the appellants, Mr Scudamore?
No changes other than I understand the healthcare contribution, a payment to the Worcestershire Acute Hospitals Trust may be varied slightly as a slightly different figure.
Okay, and what would that figure be?
My understanding is going to be reduced by approximately £3,000.
So at the moment it's 190295.
Correct.
Just bear with me.
Okay.
Yeah, that's correct.
Sorry, what was it?
So yes, at the moment it's 190,295.
187769.
So that's the figure that will appear in the final version. Okay, thank you. Mr Scudamore, anything else in terms of the definitions?
No, the definitions are all as set out in the draft.
Okay. And then moving on to Schedule 2, which is the notices. Again, anything, Mr Lester, do you want to draw my attention to there?
Nothing to raise in relation to that section.
Mr Scudamore?
No, this is the council's preferred template, which the appellant has accepted.
Okay, so moving on to Schedule 3A, and actually 4 as well, because I understand that, well, 3A concerns the covenants of the Borough Council, and there are also almost reciprocal covenants in Schedule 4. So I'm going to start first with the clinical commissioning group contribution, and turning to the council's compliance statement, Mr Lester, at paragraphs 3.3 to 3.56 on pages 13 to 14. That refers to policy 44 and also why the contribution would comply with the tests. Any comments on that? Any further comments?
The council's consideration regarding the CCG is outlined as in those particular paragraphs, and obviously is supported by the statement and justification provided by the CCG itself.
Does the appellants have anything you want to draw my attention to in relation to that part of that schedule?
I think Ms. Maria is going to pick it up.
Yes,
I think you're going to make the same
although
point.
I'm not acting for the CCG, but I think it's now called ICP, Integrated Care Board.
Okay.
So the legal body is Integrated Care Board. If you need any assistance, I can help you later on.
Thank you. I mean, we can make that change. I can agree that, I would imagine, in a straightforward manner with the council solicitor. So it's a better, more accurate definition than CCG.
Then moving on to the healthcare contribution. I don't believe that's covered at the moment by the compliance statement, Mr Lester. Can you just outline to me if you consider that would comply with the test in the NPPF or not?
Yes. In terms of that element, the council's produced an addendum to the planning obligations and still statement, which can be circulated.
Yes. I mean, what I think would be best, maybe if you read the addendum out,
Yeah,
in terms of your response to the question, then I can accept it as a written.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. This statement's an addendum to the planning obligations and still statement that was produced. It was dated the 10th of the 1st, 2025. In terms of the Worcestershire Acute Hospitals Trust, obviously the provision of healthcare facilities is necessary to meet the demand generated by the development in accordance with local plan policies and guidance within the framework. There are 13 non-prioritised objectives that have been developed and reflect the aspirations of the local plan. This includes ensuring that there is a range of health facilities that support existing and new communities and promote the role of healthy living through good planning, as well as to support provision of new and improved healthcare and related activities identified within Policy 44, which is health facilities. Detailed justification regarding the obligation is outlined in the submissions made by the Worcestershire Acute Hospitals NHS Trust. This is considered sufficient to justify the obligation that is being sought. Overall, the obligation is fairly and reasonably related to in scale and kind, given the facilities are required to meet the demand generated by the development, and in taking into account the extent of the development and the estimated number of future residents.
Thank you. So can you hand out what you've just read to me, please? So that will be inquiry documents 11. Mr. Scudamore, any comments on what you've just heard?
The healthcare contribution is, of course, in the current draft. The appellant has agreed to include it. There is, of course, a clause 2.11 in the Section 106 agreement, which is the blue pencil clause, giving you discretion as to how you wish to determine it.
Okay, thank you. Then there's the off-site sports facilities contribution and also the teenagers and young persons contribution, which I also understand relates to open space-related matters. Council's compliance statement at paragraphs 319 to 325 on page 7 to 8 refers to the Council's open space study, policy 12, and also paragraph 103 of the framework, and why the Council considers that it would comply with the tests. Any further comments, Mr. Lester?
No further comments in relation to this matter.
Mr. Scudamore?
No further comments.
And then the town centre contribution, which I understand relates to public realm improvements. This is covered by paragraphs 310 to 314 on page 6 of the Council's compliance statement. It refers to policy 31 and also why it considers it would comply with the tests. Again, any comments on that, Mr. Lester?
No comments regarding the town centre contribution.
And Mr. Scudamore?
No further comments.
Okay, and then the waste recycling facilities contribution, which relates to waste management. This is covered by paragraphs 315 to 318 on page 7 of the Council's compliance statement. Refers to the waste core strategy policy WCS 17, why it would comply with those tests. Any comments on that, Mr. Lester?
No comments.
And Mr. Scudamore?
No comments.
Okay, the next item is the golf course reconfiguration works. And obviously, in the terms of the draft 106 that I have, I think as indicated earlier in the inquiry, it states, at the moment anyway, to carry out and complete the golf course reconfiguration works prior to the commencement of development / occupation. And there's a track change comment saying appropriate trigger under discussion. So, Mr. Lester, do you want to give me an update on that, please? The council's viewpoint.
Yeah, from the council's point of view regarding the trigger for the golf course works, I think it's firstly recognised that the authority doesn't have a 5-year land supply, and there is a need for housing. Clearly, these works will take place, and there will be disruption to the golf course as part of that, and ultimately requiring this this element to be completed prior to the commencement of the dwellings, I think would be unreasonable in this instance. On that basis, it's appropriate that both the development could both the housing and the golf course works could be be progressed alongside each other, and that would be appropriate. Obviously, the golf course works ultimately would be secured by the Section 106, so the council can be confident that these works are secured.
Mr. Scudamore, obviously I've ordered evidence on this at the inquiry, so really I'm looking for, from the appellant's perspective at this stage, just really an update in terms of the wording, how it might have changed from the draft that I've got before me as it stands.
Yes, so the wording would change to not to occupy or allow, cause or permit the occupation of any dwelling unless and until the golf course reconfiguration works have been carried out and completed. I spoke to the council solicitor to explain the background as to why the occupation trigger was required. He took instructions from the relevant council officers, and they agreed that on the basis of the reasons given for why it should be occupation. So I understand the council is satisfied with that wording.
Okay, thank you. Okay, is any further comments on schedules 3A and 4, Mr. Lester?
No comments.
Scudamore?
No comments.
And then Schedule 3B, which concerns affordable housing. The Council's compliance statement at paragraphs 3.1 to 3.6 on page 5 refers to Policy 6. And the framework and sets out why it would satisfy the tests. Is there anything further that you wish to draw my attention to on affordable housing, Mr. Lester?
Nothing further to raise.
Anything further on affordable housing that the appellant wishes to draw to my attention?
Yes, this is the council's standard template for affordable housing, which the appellant has decided to accept. There is the insertion of a new Part E, which has been emailed through to PINS, but you may not have received it yet. This relates to the marketing of affordable housing units. and sets a period of 9 months within which, if there has been no interest from an RP, then
Registered provider.
yes, from a registered provider, then a affordable housing commuted sum could be paid in lieu of those affordable housing units, which the council can use, of course, for the purposes of delivering affordable housing in its administrative area. I have a hard copy if you'd like me to provide you with that.
I think at the moment, at this stage, the only version I want to see is the final version, and I'll come on to that. Yeah, well, we discussed the timescales already, but I'll reiterate those shortly. What's the council's view in terms of that additional paragraph that would be inserted?
The council is aware of this additional section paragraph. We're having active discussions within with housing and sort of development management, head of planning, regarding this new section. But I'm not in a position to agree it at this stage.
Okay, now going to move on to the custom build new plots. The compliance statements at the council's compliance statements at paragraphs 3.7 to 3.9 on page 5 refers to policy 4 and why it would satisfy the tests. One comment I did notice in the compliance statement, it said that I wonder if the council could explain to me further where it states that the obligation would not ordinarily be sought.
Well, insofar that the council doesn't have a dedicated policy that seeks custom build plots as part of new developments, but I think as outlined, policy 4 seeks a mix of housing types, of which this element, which custom build plots would satisfy.
Does the council consider it has a need for self-build?
It needs a wide range of house types, including custom build plots.
Mr. Scudamore, in terms of what's in the 106, any comments on that?
No further comments on that.
Any further comments on Schedule B, Mr. Lester?
No further comments.
Mr. Scudamore?
No, as I mentioned, it's the council's standard wording, which the appellant has accepted.
Okay, now I'm going to move on to Schedules 5 and 6. Schedule 5 concerns the covenants with the County Council, and again, similarly, they're sort of related reciprocal covenants in Schedule 6. So starting first with the education contributions, this relates to first schools, middle schools, secondary schools and SEND schools. The Council's compliance statement at paragraphs 3.32 to 3.34 on page 11, Mr. Lester, refers to policy 28 and why it would satisfy the tests. Do any further comments?
I don't have any further comments other than obviously the council statement should be read alongside the justification that's outlined within the WCC education submissions.
Mr. Scudamore, any comments on that?
No, again, it's the council's standard wording, which the appellant is accepting.
Okay, then moving on to the highways contributions. These relate to bus infrastructure and service contributions and school and community transport contributions. The compliance statements of the council at paragraphs 3.35 to 3.52 on pages 11 to 13 refers to policy 28 and why it would satisfy the tests. Again, Mr. Lester, any comments?
I have nothing further to add.
Mr Scudamore?
Nothing further. Thank you.
Okay, and overall, in terms of the planning obligations that contained in the draft 106, Ms Lester, any further comments?
No further comments.
Mr Scudamore?
No further comments.
Okay. As I've set out earlier in the inquiry, in terms of the deadline for the final version, that will be Friday end of next week, so that's the 31st of January.
Excuse me, could I, with regard to that date, we will need to make the amendments and send them round to the other parties for the acute contribution and for the changes to the CCG contribution. And we're also obviously waiting for the confirmation from the council relating to the new provisions in the affordable housing schedule. From there, we have to get 6 parties to sign, including a bank. And the council itself has specific sealing days, I believe on Tuesdays and Thursdays, for the county and the borough. And therefore, I think it will be very difficult to get all of that achieved by the 31st. If we could ask for a further week until the 7th of February, that is more realistic in terms of being able to make those changes and then circulate the engrossments for signature and then execution, sealing and completion by the 2 councils.
Mr Lester, any comments on that?
I would support the comments from the appellants. I'm acutely aware regarding the signing dates for Section 106 for both Redditch and the county. So I think a further week would be appropriate in this instance.
Okay. I'm prepared to accept an additional week, the 10th of February, but that will be the absolute last date. Beyond the night, it's in my will to issue a decision in terms of how things stand at that stage. So.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. That completes the planning obligations roundtable session. The time now is 22:11, so the inquiry is adjourned until 11:10. Thank you.
I couldn't pick it up.
It's now 11:10, so the inquiry is resumed. I'm now going to move on to closing statements. So would the council make its closing statement, please?
Thank you, sir.
Have you got written copies you can hand around?
I have.
Yeah, you can do that first, please. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you very much.
So that will be inquiry document 12. Please proceed.
Thank you, sir. The LPA previously made an opening submission as part of the inquiry, and it was not intending to make a closing submission. The purpose of this closing submission is to clarify and to remove an element of the opening submission. During opening submissions on behalf of the local planning authority, it was mistakenly stated that the council had withdrawn its reasons for refusal of the planning application. However, this is not the case. The council's position is that following the appellant's lodging of this appeal, after careful consideration of the grounds of the appeal and having undertaken relevant consultation, the council decided not to defend its decision to refuse the proposed scheme. This submission correctly reflects the council's position. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Banner, please make your closing statement.
Can we just get this? We've sent an electronic version to the case officer, sir, as well. So,
Actually, Mr. Lester, can you make sure you send an electronic version to the case officer? Yeah.
Thank you.
as before, if there's anybody who'd like a hard copy who doesn't get one, then if you can let me know afterwards, then we'll try and make one available for you.
Thank you. That will be inquiry document 13.
Thank you, sir. So, sir, the incontrovertible evidence before the inquiry is that the 5-year housing land supply situation in Redditch is one of severe shortfall, measured against the standard method for calculating local housing need, which, whilst Norca might not like it, is what national planning policy requires. Whilst the December 2024 standard method produces a local housing need for Redditch which is significantly higher than the December 23 figure, for the reasons explained by Mrs Ventham in her evidence in chief, it's the 23 figure which is the one that's out of kilter. The December 24 figure bears more relation to the pre-December 23 position and the local plan. But in any event, it's what national policy now requires. National policy also requires compliance with both the housing delivery test and the requirement for a 5-year supply. One isn't a substitute for the other. In any event, for all but 2 of the last 13 years for which monitoring data exists, fewer new homes have been delivered than the local plan requirement. The suggestion by Norca that housing delivery in the borough has been satisfactory is therefore misplaced. There's been no challenge at the inquiry to the evidence of a significant unmet need for affordable housing in the borough. As I mentioned in opening, only 9% of identified affordable housing needs were met in the last 3 years, a cumulative shortfall of 245 affordable homes over that period. On any view, therefore, paragraph 11D of the NPPF is engaged, and as a consequence, the most important development plan policies for determining the application and appeal are deemed out of date by the framework, and the tilted balance is engaged. Against that background, the position of Norca that any unallocated development on undeveloped sites in the borough should only come forward via future local plan, the timescale for which and content of which are wholly uncertain, flies in the face of national policy and is, with the greatest respect to them, untenable. All that said, this isn't actually a case which turns on paragraph 11 of the framework. As Mrs Ventham has explained, the appeal scheme is within the urban area. And the urban area is where the development plan suggests there should be a focus for new development. It's also free of landscape, environmental and heritage designations. It's in accordance with the development plan as a whole, noting in this context policy 1 of the local plan, which builds in the tilted balance presumption in favour of sustainable development into the development plan. The appeal scheme would deliver a range of important other benefits beyond the 214 desperately needed homes, 66 of which would be affordable. Those benefits are summarised in Mrs Bentham's proof. Most of them weren't challenged during the inquiry. The golf and open space related benefits were, however, the subject of discussion, so I will address these now. The only independent expert evidence before the inquiry in relation to golf provision was that of Mr Mark Smith, and he explained in the clearest possible terms how the reconfiguration of the golf course at Abbey Golf Club, which the appeal scheme would facilitate, would make the course substantially more attractive as a whole, even if there are some local dissenters, more attractive as a whole to the market it serves. In particular, the golf break market that the Abbey Hotel needs to harness repeat business from in order for both hotel and golf course to thrive in what are challenging economic and market circumstances for the reason Mr Smith gave in his evidence, written and oral. In light of that evidence, and in light of Mrs Bentham's planning analysis drawn from it, the only rational conclusion based upon the material before the inquiry is first that the appeal scheme would deliver a range of important benefits to the golf provision at the appeal site. Secondly, that there's no evidence of any alternative deliverable development which would deliver those benefits. Thirdly, the net effect of the proposed development would be to amply comply with paragraph 104B of the framework in light of the qualitative improvements that the appeal scheme would facilitate. And lastly, this is the case irrespective of any short-term impacts during the construction phase, which would, as both Mr Smith and Mrs Bentham explained, more sustainably and expeditiously involve twin tracking of the working of the golf course and the preliminaries of the housing development, subject to a preoccupation condition as opposed to a pre-commencement condition where one would come rigidly after the other. The pre-commencement condition, or restriction rather, wouldn't be necessary to make the development acceptable, and it would unjustifiably hold up the delivery of the appeal scheme's benefits. There'd also be significant improvements to the amount of publicly accessible open space. As Mrs Bentham has explained, both in writing and orally to the inquiry, the appeal site, which is private land, doesn't currently count towards measured open space standards. The circa 3.4 hectare new publicly accessible open space would thus amount to a meaningful quantitative increase in public open space provision, whilst at the same time facilitating a qualitative enhancement to the private golf club for the reasons I've already outlined. As is recorded in the Statement of Common Ground with the Council, the site is in an accessible and sustainable location. Mr Fairgreave's written and oral evidence explained to the inquiry how residents of the appeal scheme would be able to access a range of facilities and destinations by foot, bike and bus, and in combination with either one of those, or with a short car journey, which for an increasing proportion would be by EV vehicles. The facilities accessible on foot include a pretty substantial M&S food store, the Marstons and Abbey Hotel restaurants and bars, the private health club and spa at the Abbey Hotel, the council-owned leisure facilities at the Abbey Stadium, and various other destinations listed in the transport assessment. Pretty much all of Redditch is within a 5-kilometre cycle distance, including the station and the direct bus links, both the station and Longbridge. And Longbridge, as well as being an employment destination in its own right, significant employers including, for example, St Modwyn and M&S, Longbridge has a station where the bus will stop, which is nearer to and has more frequent services to Birmingham than Redditch, and indeed more frequent services to the intervening stops between Redditch, Longbridge and Birmingham, namely Bourneville, where Cadbury is located, and University, where Birmingham University and the QE2 Hospital are located. Both those stations are accessible by train from Redditch and Longbridge. Travel planning will provide encouragement to residents to take up sustainable modes of transport through a range of tried and tested methods. As for the effect on the local highway network, Mr Bales has suggested on behalf of Norca that a single additional car would amount to a severe impact within the meaning of paragraph 116 of the framework. It's not only in clear conflict with the appeal decision cited by Mr Fairgreave and unsupported by any other authorities, it would, if incorrect, bring planning permissions to a standstill in much of the country, as Mr Fairgreave explained. The appeal decisions in Yarm and Ashford, to which Mr Fairgreave has referred, both indicate that a 3-minute additional delay wouldn't amount to a severe impact. And even on Mr. Bale's worse than worst case figures, the maximum peak of additional delay in the present case would be barely over half that. Further, and in any event, these are worse than worst case figures. For example, the stage scenario 3 discussed. They're not, therefore, reasonable scenarios for the purposes of paragraph 116 of the framework, for the reasons given by Mr. Fairgrieve. Mr. Tucker has explained how the appeal scheme will be of a high standard of design quality and placemaking. The net density is 36 dwellings per hectare, which is at the lower end of the range required by the development plan. The appeal scheme is not, however, a one-size-fits-all development. You've heard from Mr. Tucker how the various surrounding and nearby character areas studied have informed the design, layout, architecture and landscaping of each part of the appeal scheme. Thus, for example, a denser, more efficient and continuous frontage provides enclosure to the primary and secondary roads and Dagenham Way Courtyard, with a slacker density in larger plots in the parts of the site that are joined with and are visible from Hither Green Lane. All of that set out in the design and access statement as updated. There's no evidential basis for identifying adverse ecology or heritage impacts, neither of which were alleged in the reasons for refusal before those reasons for refusal were not defended, as we now use the terminology. Norca's new evidence on flooding will be dealt with later by written representations, as you previously indicated, but for the avoidance of doubt, our headline positions include the following. The appeal scheme axiomatically passes the sequential test, to the extent that test is applicable, given the range of interconnected benefits, and that's a term used by the case law on the sequential test, the Mead judgment. The range of interconnected benefits of the scheme includes the benefits associated with reworking the golf course, which could only be facilitated on this site. As Mrs. Ventham put it in evidence in chief, the sequential test in this context would be a one-horse race. Even where the sequential test applies and is fails, that's not an automatic reason for refusal. It goes to the planning balance, in which context, as Mr. Justice Holgate held in the Mead judgment, considerations such as whether there is evidence that identified housing needs can be met on sequential preferential sites, having regard to the spatial strategy, are relevant. And Mrs. Ventham made clear in the present case the answer here would be a clear no, given the housing supply shortfall. Identified needs can't be met on sequentially preferable sites, having regard to constraints in Redditch such as Greenbelt. Lastly, there's zero evidence that the exception test would be failed. For those outline reasons, as well as the fuller reasons in our proofs and rebuttal, the proper conclusion is that the appeal scheme is in accordance with the development plan, just as the officer's report recommended, even at a time when the council's 5-year supply was several times more than it currently is. Whilst local residents may not have liked that recommendation, it was the independent professional judgment of the case officer reached in an entirely proper manner and reasoned impeccably. The council's decision to abandon, or as now clarified, not to defend the planning committee's rejection of that advice was also entirely procedurally orthodox. No one's pointed to any breach of the council's constitution or any other procedural rules in this respect, and rightly so. Even if you were to find some non-accordance with the development plan for some reason, there are nonetheless compelling material considerations in favour of granting planning permission, chiefly the support the appeal scheme gets from the MPPF, including the tilted balance under paragraph 11D2, which is engaged due to the housing land supply shortfall. Any adverse impacts of granting permission do not come close to significantly and demonstrably outweighing the many important benefits of the scheme. So for those outline reasons, as elaborated more fully in our evidence, written and oral, we respectfully invite you to allow the appeal, and thank you for holding the inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Ballard. Okay, that completes the closing statement. So I'm now going to move on to cost applications. The council, making any cost applications?
No.
The appellants?
No, thank you.
Okay, before I close the inquiry, I'll just touch on what's outstanding. So Wednesday the 29th of January next week, we have Norca's comments on the highways rebuttal, which the appellant submitted. And on the same day, we have the comments from the appellant on the flood risk document that Norca submitted.
Yes.
That's next Wednesday. And then on Friday, the 7th of February, is the final deadline for the Section 106 agreement. Obviously, I made the arrangements for the site visits already yesterday. I suggest we meet at 2:30 at the point that was indicated yesterday. And that's the area to the right-hand side off Hither Green Lane. And in terms of the attendees, obviously, as well as myself, it'll be Mr Lester, Mrs Ventham, Mr Jacobs and Miss Dixon.
So just on that, just to clarify, in terms of attendees, Mr Green from Barratt David Wilson will also be attending.
Okay.
And the hotel manager will just escort us round the course, obviously.
And
Just
what's Mr. I need Mr Green's full name.
Mr David Green.
Okay.
And the hotel manager is just...
So what's his position?
Sorry. Senior technical manager.
Okay. And is that the same company name that's on the...
Yes, it's Barratt. Yes, it is. That's exactly it. And then we will be escorted just by Darren Purnell, Purnell.
And he's from the hotel,
He's the hotel manager, yes.
Hotel manager. Okay, thank you.
He's aware of all the procedures, but obviously just because it's a golf course.
Mrs Ventham, will you be acting as a spokesperson for the appellant?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. As I say, if we can meet at 2:30, obviously I'll give people time to have some lunch, also get changed and so forth, and get to the site visit. Thank you for your contributions. The inquiry is now closed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good.